Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to our 40th anniversary banquet this evening. I'm Mark Cunningham, the Executive Director of COBYS, and I'm truly honored to be celebrating such a milestone for our organization with all of you. So in a few moments, we're going to share a meal together, and then we're going to have our program. We're going to highlight a little bit about where we've been and where we're going. And at this time, I would like to invite Aaron Bensing. Aaron is a member of our board of directors at COBYS to come forward and ask the blessing for our meal. Aaron.
Would you pray with me? Lord God, thank you just for bringing everybody together tonight to celebrate what you've done over the past 40 years with COBYS. Lord, we praise you for your provision, for your faithfulness, and just how you've been at work in so many people's lives, both the children and families, the staff, and each person that's here tonight. Lord, we ask for your continued blessing, for your continued guidance over the next 40 years, and just at the time that we spend together tonight, celebrating, reflecting, that it would be glorifying to you. In your name I pray, amen.
So a few words about dinner this evening. The coffee that is on your table is decaf. If you would like regular coffee or if you want water for tea, it's over to my left by the kitchen. There is going to be hot bacon dressing for your salad this evening. That's going to be on the table. There's also a little bit of ranch. If you want more ranch, you're allowed to ask your server, although with hot bacon dressing, why? But if you want to, you may. That's up to you. Members of the Middle Creek Kitchen Committee are going to come to your table and they will release you to the buffet. We're having a buffet dinner this evening. And they're also going to be bringing desserts to the table. So when they bring a dessert to the table, they're going to go every other with cherry pie and chocolate cake. Please accept whatever dessert they give you. Once they send them out to you, once they give them to you, you're welcome to exchange with anybody at your table. And if you can't agree with your table meats, I suggest arm wrestling. That's what we did when I was growing up. Every now and again, if there was an extra piece of something that we wanted, we would arm wrestle and the winner would take it. And if you would look at the pictures of my growing up years, apparently I won a lot. But I can remember one time, my mom was a good cook, but one time she was not on her A game that night. And my brother and my dad arm wrestled, and they determined that the loser had to eat the food that was left over. So it doesn't always work out. This evening, I'm quite confident that the food that has been prepared for us is going to be delicious and ample. So please enjoy your meal.
You all, as well as others that joined us at noon, helped make up just about 570 people who joined us today in honor of COBYS and this anniversary. So we are so very thankful for that. As you well know, for this very delicious meal, there's a lot of work that goes into that. So as we do pretty much every year, we want to make sure that we give a big round of applause to the Middle Creek Kitchen Committee and all the work that they do to make this a success. We were also blessed to have, as you came in this evening, you may have heard on the piano, little gathering music. Our thanks to Blake Hamilton for providing that.
And I would like to introduce our executive team. You've met Ann Stokes, our Director of Development. We have Cindy Umberger over to my right, Director of Business Operations, Abby Kaiser, Director of Family Life Services, and Mary Sorber, Director of Placement Services. These people do a lot to make sure COBYS runs smoothly, spend a lot of time with staff and programming, and so we're certainly grateful for their service to COBYS. Thank you, guys. I also want to highlight some of the other ways COBYS is being recognized for our years of hard work and service. At the noon seating today, we were honored to receive a letter of commendation for outstanding contributions to the community from the Lancaster County Commissioners. And Commissioners Ray DiAgostino and Craig Lehman were here and presented and stayed for a portion of our program. We also had State Senators Ryan Aument and Scott Martin attend, and they presented us with a joint Senate citation this morning as well. Additionally, Representative Smoker has placed remarks in the congregational record honoring COBYS, so we're thankful for all of those recognitions that we received earlier today.
So today, we are celebrating 40 years of COBYS delivering service and ministries throughout the community. As we reminisce and as we look back to our very humble beginnings, we hope that you'll have a few laughs with us, but also gain an appreciation of the evolution of our service delivery. Since 40 years breaks nicely into decades, we'll celebrate in 4 parts. And so we'll begin with the 80s.
The 1980s. Remember the 80s? More than half of our current employees weren't even born yet. The decade started with a couple of miracles. Well, sports miracles at least. The 80s saw these people and products define and influence the culture of the decade. And there was opportunity for wholesome entertainment. But what were we thinking with these? But the world in the 80s was, and this will come as no surprise, in turmoil. Occasionally it seemed out of control. But it wasn't all bad news, gloom and doom. There were also signs of hope. A big sign of hope was that COBYS, Church of the Brethren Youth Services, was formed. COBYS became more than a sign of hope. It became a mission of caring, compassionate care, delivered with dignity and transformative hope.
In a world of big hair, arena bands, volcanoes erupting, it's hard to imagine anything beginning humbly, but that's exactly what COBYS did. The seeds for COBYS were planted 7 years earlier when queries from the Hempfield Churches of the Brethren and the Mechanic Grove Church of the Brethren were sent to the Atlantic Northeast District. And after years of discussion and planning, the Church of the Brethren Youth Services, COBYS, was founded.
And founded with a focus on caring for one child, one family, and one interaction at a time. This is a focus that we maintain today. What was COBYS like at the beginning? Humble is a very good description. Starting with only an executive director and a caseworker, COBYS privately placed teens in foster homes. The first offices were at Hempfield Church of the Brethren.
And through the decade, the organization grew as our services adjusted, changed, and gained momentum. A growing number of resource families were added, and a boys' group home was begun. Services expanded from primarily serving just teens to serving kids all the ages from birth up through 18. COBYS offices moved to a house near Roots Market, which is near Mannheim, and what COBYS was doing was getting noticed. When I started working at COBYS, I learned very quickly, Glenn Faust was my boss, first boss, I learned very quickly that Glenn was a very skillful storyteller. I also learned very quickly that almost all of his stories had some elements of truth to them. I do remember Glenn telling me at one time that he was getting calls from almost every state in the United States looking for services from COBYS Family Services, or from COBYS.
From the beginning, there has been a constant stream of amazing foster families who have been a part of COBYS. They have brought stability and love into the lives of the children we serve. Glenn Faust served as executive director from 1980 until 2001. He remembers how important good resource families were and are to the success of COBYS in nurturing the children in our care.
Well, I think that at the beginning, a lot of people thought that we couldn't find foster families to work with these children. And we were blessed with good families, and I think a good family is people that were willing to do it our way, and they always worked very well with the children. When I think of Christian families, I think of parents that do things along with their children. They don't bring a child into the world and let them run, and expect them to stay out of trouble. They do things with the children, and that makes a difference to them. One thing that I always tried to get is Christian people who understood what their job was about, that they were to relate to the children, and they were going to help the children befriend them and give a listening ear to them. And I think that's important to it.
Glenn served faithfully and frugally for 21 years, charting and overseeing the course for COBYS.
And one of those amazing resource families that joined us in the 80s was Dennis and Ann Saylor. I know. Ann and Dennis fostered their first child in 1987, and their relationship with COBYS and kids was just beginning. And little did they or we know what it was going to become.
Well, being unable to have children on our own, we decided to pray and see what God had in store for us, and He just opened the doors to do foster care. And that was, we prayed for one, and God blessed us with many more. June of
Back in the Stone Ages.
1987. For me, I feel, being we couldn't have children, I really felt a good calling that God was choosing us to meet the needs of another child, being we could not have a child through our own. And just being able to know that my patients will be tested, but I can always go to God and He will help give me the strength to do what I'm asked to do for that child.
By the end of 1989, the Sailors had fostered 4 children. In support of our resource families and foster children, counseling services began at several locations in the mid-1980s. Family life education courses and seminars also began to address the increasingly complex needs of our children and families.
And the end of the decade saw COBY's main office move to the Oregon Mill in Leola, setting up the next 10 years for a decade of growth in the often turbulent times of the 1980s. So we bookend the miracles at the beginning of the decade, which we are not referring to the Phillies or the U.S. hockey team, but the miracle of getting COBYS off the ground, to the almost daily little miracles of making often life-altering differences in people's lives. From the seemingly ordinary tasks to the sometimes heroic accomplishments, COBYS was becoming well-established as a reputable agency for foster care, counseling, and family life education services.
That reminds me of something that happened in 1989 that demonstrates just what you're talking about.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Sorber, our Director of Placement Services. Clearly, she knows a little bit about the 80s.
Seriously? Did you really have to show those pictures? You know, 2 can play at that game, Mark.
I think we're getting a little off track here, Mary. And by the way, let's talk about a committed employee. Go back to that picture of Mary. Apparently, she just got married that day and came in her wedding dress. Do you have a story, Mary? Please.
I do.
All right, go ahead.
Well, back when I was a very young social worker, a miracle was placing 6 children in a 4-hour span of time For context to what this means, at the time we had approximately 60 children placed in care that year and approximately 30 families available to foster children. I was hired by Glenn Faust on August 3rd in 1989. Glenn thought that I had the spark that he was looking for in a COBYS employee. Little did I know what was about to follow. It was August 31st, 1989, and I was one of 3 caseworkers. We received a call at 4 p.m. from Berks County Children and Youth. They had 6 children that needed to be placed in foster care. The children were living in deplorable and very unsafe housing with their birth mother. This was our first referral for a sibling group of 6 children, and the kids were slated to go on my caseload, which meant I would be responsible for working with them while they were in foster care. We worked as a team to find homes for the children and were able to do so within 4 hours of the original call. What I learned on that day was that this was a place I wanted to be because everyone shared common beliefs and values. We were already a team, and I was only employed at COBYS for approximately 3 weeks. We cared about each other, and we all wanted these kids, all kids, to be safe and well cared for. Through all of the rapid planning, we found out little about the children. We knew their approximate ages and their genders. We described what I thought was a very serious scenario. However, the information did not change the foster family's decision to accept the children into their home. If we had not worked together as a team, these children may have had a very different outcome. I knew on that day in August 1989, I wanted to be a part of the COBYS organization for a long time. So thank you, Glenn, for seeing the spark in me I didn't know was there and allowing me the privilege of living out my desire to keep kids safe and strengthen families.
So you see, from humble beginnings to a vibrant, growing agency, COBYS was developing into an organization that was staying true to its calling to serve families in need, one child at a time, even if that means serving 1 child in just a few hours.
After the turbulent 80s, the world was ready for a break. And the 90s, for the most part, were a reprieve.
The 1990s. Kick-started by the hope and optimism at the end of the 80s, the world was remarkably quiet throughout most of the 1990s decade, a decade that seemed to have something for everyone. The potential large-scale conflict in the Middle East ended quickly and set the tone for international cooperation. U.S. politics were remarkably bipartisan through most of the decade. On the world stage, major events stirred optimism for a more peaceful, just world. Technology boomed with the growth of personal computers and the internet opening to unrestricted commerce. Search engines vied to show us the results. On TV, we watched an old friend leave, but were entertained by new ones. We were also touched by drama. At the movies, one ran away at the box office, and one ran away with our hearts. In sports, it was all or nothing. But there was always entertainment available at home. CDs were the new media, and there were choices for everyone. The 90s provided cultural stability for growth, innovation, and activity. The ministries at COBYS in the 90s mirrored growth in the rest of the world. It was a time when our services expanded to meet the growing needs of our community.
COBYS, too, enjoyed the optimistic outlook at the onset of the 90s. Having relocated to the Oregon Mill in 1989, the board opened the decade by voting to purchase that building and allowing for future growth. COBYS also changed its name from Church of the Brethren Youth Services to COBYS Family Services, reflecting the expanding scope of services and ministries we offered.
The demands and needs for various kinds of social work and services ebbs and flows with the best practices of the day and with what society dictates. The 90s saw COBYS adapt to those needs. Numerous counseling centers were opened around the region, and a family life center was opened in Germantown, Philadelphia. A good example of services that COBYS developed to meet a need is the COBYS Boys Group Home. The group home served boys over a 9-year period, and when that program was no longer viable, COBYS pivoted to serving teen mothers and children in a group home which started its 16-year run in 1995.
Those days.
Well, hi,
Ladies and
Lori.
gentlemen, Lori DePoto and Karen Rice, two of our resource home coordinators. They know about those days because years and years and years ago, they helped run the group home.
Old photos again, Mark? Do we need to remind you?
No, let's just get back.
Looking good.
Good. Let's get back to the program there, ladies. Go ahead. Good.
When I started working at COBYS, I was a caseworker overseeing the boys living at the group home. Our goal was to provide physical, emotional, and spiritual stability for the boys when their biological families were unable to do so.
Karen, you should remind or tell these folks what type of activities the boys engaged in.
Well, the home was run a lot like any other family. The boys went to school, were expected to do homework, and they had chores and household responsibilities. At the same time, we were helping them deal with traumatic family situations and hopefully setting them up for the best chance of a stable future. We tried to provide some fun as well, and on weekends we would go roller skating, bowling, and occasionally go to Hershey Park in the summer. And one time we even went to the beach.
It sounds like the staff really walked alongside the boys, providing loving care when they needed it. When COBYS transitioned to providing a home for teen moms and their children, where I worked, we tried to provide the same type care. The home had 6 bedrooms, which meant we had the capacity to care for 6 young ladies and their children. For many years, there was even a wait list for our services. The goal was to give some stability to the lives of the young women before they gave birth, and once the babies arrived, to teach them parenting and life skills.
What kind of activities were done at the house?
The young mothers would attend school during the day. Childcare was provided for their children. During the evening, schoolwork would be completed, as well as attending parenting classes. The young ladies learned the basic things like finances and budgeting, laundry and cooking, and how to squeeze a shower in for themselves with a child on the move. The time the mothers and the children spent at the home was used to teach many life lessons as possible, while learning to parent. Learning the realities of parenting allowed them to make the important decision of whether or not they would be able to parent their own child.
Well, despite all those difficult times, were there fun times too?
There certainly were. Part of being a good parent is playing with your child. I can remember the moms taking the children for walks around Pleasant View retirement community that neighbored the group home, and those residents loved to dote on them. I also remember watching moms and their kids enjoying the snow and seeing them play with their children.
As the structure of care changed, the group home program was closed. We adapted our services to meet current needs with new best practice programs. But while we provided this care, we made an impact on each young man and young mother that we served.
Thank you, Lori and Karen. During the 1990s, COBYS became more intentional about fundraising to meet the gap between providing basic services and providing transformative care, delivered with compassion, dignity, and hope. The annual banquet was also introduced. 2 capital campaigns were held, and several fundraising walks were launched, including the Roll and Stroll, which eventually became Bike and Hike. And COBYS became the beneficiary of the Wenger Foundation Praise Dinner.
The 90s as a decade also saw growth as COBYS became a licensed adoption agency, and we also launched the reunification program, which now we call the permanency program, and we were also named the Pennsylvania Agency of the Year by the Pennsylvania Foster Parent Association. So being named Pennsylvania Agency of the Year is a testament to the staff at COBYS and the exceptional resource families that work with us. And that reminds me, I wonder what Dennis and Ann Saylor were up to in the 90s. Let's check this out.
My job? Oh, I guess I'm just there to, you just come to live here for a short time. You don't have to like me. You just have to live here. This is your safe place for now. Well, when they first come, you show them the bedroom, and then you show them your kitchen, and then you start showing them the cupboards that we have food at this house, and you don't have to worry about food for now. And just letting them know that they'll have a place to sleep every night, a bed to sleep in. They won't have to share a bed sometimes, or be like a family bed or anything like that, but just to let them know that at this house, this is how we do it. You know, you'll have your own little separate quarters, making them feel, you know, that they're safe for a time. Miss Ann. But a lot of times they're at the age where they like to have a mom and dad figure. And if they call us mom and dad, we just let it go.
How often have I showed up and there were other strangers sitting at the table? That would happen quite regularly. She got tired of calling me and let me know. I'd just come home and there's 2, 3, 4 more people here today. Well, there was a limit. We could only have 6, so I knew it wouldn't be more than 6, so that was where it would stop.
By the mid-90s, Ann and Dennis had fostered 20 children, and they clearly had hit their stride and knew exactly what to provide for these kids.
During the expansion and growth of the decade, COBYS provided more targeted and adaptive services to care for each child with a continuity of care as if they were our only child. The next decade would only deepen these services. Perhaps it was the nervousness of the potential shift out of the 90s into the unknown that spurred the Y2K concerns. Or maybe we all sensed that the calm couldn't last. But 2000 arrived, and boy, did things change.
The 2000s. We somehow entered the 2000s or aughts without the world's electronics and systems shutting down. But the relative calm of the 1990s was going to quickly disappear. It wasn't long before bad news began to arrive. A horrific act of terror changed the world, and after that, tragic events continued throughout the decade. But through the mess and turmoil, for better or worse, there was innovation. There was music for all listeners, and movies or TV to entertain. Some incredible moments in sports. We even had new distractions that didn't fall into any category. Even with all these distractions, the world's troubles of the 2000s also translated to troubles close to home. Throughout the decade, COBYS added depth of service to respond to the call to help children and families.
Turbulent 2000s would be an appropriate name for the decade. So much was happening in the world, and unfortunately here in our region too. The need for many services that COBYS provides continued.
So in the year 2000, COBYS had an opportunity to celebrate our 20 years of services by having our 20th anniversary celebration at the Lebanon Expo Center. And we announced that year how many people we had served in our first 20 years of existence. Does anybody here remember what that number is? I'd be shocked if you did. I organized the event and I didn't remember, so I would imagine you wouldn't. The number is 14,654. That's how many people we had served in the first 20 years of service. And the thing I remember about that event is that that was when I learned that you can only string 2 or maybe 3 strands of Christmas lights together before they won't function. We put 14,600 lights up in the Expo Center, thinking that would be a very short process. It was not. We spent hours and hours and hours with extension cords and outlets trying to figure this out, but we got it done. Did you know this about Christmas lights? I'm asking, did you know this about Christmas lights? You did. There's nodding out there. That's when I learned. I learned at our 20th anniversary is when I learned. All right. So after guiding COBYS for nearly 2 decades, Glenn Faust retired at the end of 2001, having navigated his share of rough waters. Glenn, to this day, remains optimistic about the future of COBYS.
Well, I think that COBYS is smart if it continues being Christian and hiring people that know how to work with kids, you know, and know how to listen to kids when they're talking. And I think about the time that I worked at COBYS, probably the best thing that I do was listening, because you could tell they didn't get that at home. They didn't get that anywhere else, and they were always excited about talking and telling their story. The foster parents being Christian and knowing how to work with kids, and the staff being Christian and knowing how to work with kids, I think made a difference. I think the people are what make the program. Thank you for all that you've done for COBYS in the past, and I'm sure that the concern is going to be in the future.
So we thank and acknowledge Glenn for his service and support of COBYS. Glenn, will you please stand so we can recognize and thank you.
At the end of the 1990s, there was a growing need for specialized work to be done on the county level. Based on our record of providing exceptional care, COBYS entered into a partnership with Lancaster County Children and Youth Social Services Agency to provide intensive program services for foster children, biological families, and foster parents. The Family Reunification Program, whose name was soon changed to the Permanency Program, opened an office on East Orange Street in downtown Lancaster. To provide greater depth of service, we purchased a property on East King Street, and the Permanency Unit had a permanent home. Later in 2015, at the request of the agency, COBYS began doubling the size of staff of that unit to meet the demand for this excellent program. These cases are often gut-wrenching cases in nature and sometimes can take years to come to finalization.
I can attest to that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Krista Rankin, one of our Permanency Unit supervisors. Krista, would you like to share an example of your work?
I would be happy to. As the audience may know from previous banquets, the Permanency Unit works with biological parents and families with the goal of safely reuniting the family, if at all possible. I did not see that picture in the noon banquet. One of my finer moments. We help those families implement and follow court-ordered plans, all while making sure the children are safe and prepared for all eventualities. One case that sums up what can happen is the case of Austin. Austin is a current foster child who was placed into care in May of 2012 when he was 9 years old due to concerns for his mother's mental health stability. Despite parental rights for Austin being terminated in 2013, which meant that he was available for adoption if an appropriate family could be identified, a permanent family had not yet been found for him. Instead, Austin bounced around a variety of placements, including foster homes, a youth shelter, residential treatment facilities, and an independent living group home. During this time of instability in his life, he developed unsafe behaviors, and there were concerns for his own mental health. For much of his time in foster care, Austin's case had been overseen by the COBYS Permanency Unit. I was his caseworker for several years, and caseworker Andy Gonzalez has spent the last few years tirelessly working with Austin. During these years of tremendous instability for him, the leadership and staff of the Permanency Unit and many others in Austin's network of care throughout the child welfare system never gave up on him. They worked hard to make sure that Austin did not get lost in the system. We know that as a child ages in the foster care system and experiences upheaval and disappointment along the way, their behaviors tend to worsen, and it can be harder and harder for them to experience any kind of healing or hope to find that forever home. In the last few years, Austin has made a lot of progress, receiving mental health support from a COBYS therapist and from others. He has come to an understanding as a young man that he can still have some type of relationship with his biological mother while also being open to living in a safe, permanent, adoptive home. Austin is now 17 years old. Recently, a COBYS resource family with an interest in supporting older children was identified as a potential resource for him. Over a series of several visits, the family began to build a relationship with Austin, and he felt that being a part of this family was a good place for him. He moved from a group home into their home just a few weeks ago. It's a testament to the tremendous character of both the resource family and Austin that they were both open to building this relationship with one another. No one can predict the future, but it certainly appears that there is a good possibility that Austin could be adopted by this resource family, perhaps a few months after his 18th birthday. Every person deserves to have a loving home and support system, no matter their age. The Permanency Unit in COBYS is blessed to have been a part of Austin's journey. He's an example of what continued compassion, persistence, and never giving up hope can do.
Thanks for sharing, Krista. So when we talk about serving one child as if they're only child, as if they're our only child, we mean it. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes a whole lot longer than we anticipate. But this is an excellent example of our staff going beyond the basics to stay with the case and finding the best possible outcome, even if it wasn't what we first envisioned. So foster care and adoption continued on a strong course throughout the 2000s, as did Ann and Dennis Saylor. So let's check in with them, because by the end of 2009, they were a well-oiled foster care machine.
It takes more than love, because these kids have been hurt and broken. And for myself, even though we've been foster parents for almost 33 years, we still don't know everything. Each kid is different. There's a lot of learning and just educating yourself about trauma and how much these kids can make a different effect in your family, and if your children in the home, how it might affect them. So it's a whole team effort with the whole family when you get a child in your home. Philippians
4:16.
I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Because without him, I don't know how you could do it, because you need somebody else to be there when you're at your low point. You can just pray to God and say, carry me. And you know he's there. He's just, prayer away.
Through the turmoil years, COBYS refocused our mission statement to reflect the broader goal of raising children and adults up to be all that they can be. We worked through both external and internal challenges of running an agency built to serve those in society that need us most. Having not only survived the decade, but thrived at our core mission, COBYS was poised to take on the 2010s.
So in spite of the 2000s being such an unsettled decade, COBYS was primed for a reset and ready to move forward. But what would the next decade bring?
The 2010s. What would the 2010s decade become? Coming out of the turbulent 2000s, where would the world go next? With the 2010s, all bets were off. The world was still at times a crazy and dangerous place to live. But that and other craziness drew some people together, and people began to unite and rally for their causes. Some craziness was entertaining. Some inspiring. And some just seemed unexplainable. But throughout the crazy decade, and maybe in response to it, COBYS recommitted to grow in providing help to those we serve. Growth seen in our facilities and depths of essential, life-altering services.
Of course, we didn't know any of that at the start of the decade. Or who could have predicted this? The 2010s at COBYS Family Services would see adaptation and growth to meet the increasing and changing needs of the region.
COBYS started the decade with Mark becoming executive director.
Off to a shaky start.
Not true at all. Quite the opposite. COBYS evaluated, adjusted, and made tough but sound choices about the kinds of care we were best able to provide in ways to strengthen the continuum of care for families served by our programs.
So at the end of 2011, after 16 years, we closed the teen mother and child group home. So what was once a thriving ministry was no longer financially feasible, nor was it the best model of care for this population. So this is one example of shifting care and services. Another occurred soon after when we purchased the building at 171 East King Street in Lancaster. That became the Family Life Center. Family life education classes are held there in addition to many other locations throughout the region. And while we sometimes focus heavily on capacity and quality for foster care and adoption, family life education services have expanded to meet the needs of the wider community, providing parents, other adults, and children with information and skills to foster cooperation, courage, responsibility, self-esteem, and respect.
As the number of kids in foster care rose, we added caseworkers to provide quality care, and we added additional staff to care for our foster families. The increase in staff and overcrowding at the main office led to the decision to grow our facilities. So in 2018, we purchased the Murray Hill Center building, which now houses foster care, adoption, and family life education. This space expansion, in turn, provided more space for our growing counseling services, which added depth of expertise and capacity to serve growing needs around the community. There has been an increased recognition of the need to focus on trauma and our lives. So since 2011, the number of therapists we have on staff has tripled, increasing our capacity to deliver excellent care.
I have a great example of that, Anne.
Ladies and gentlemen, Abby Kaiser, our Director of Family Life Services. What do you have, Abby?
Joy was placed into foster care as an infant and developed a strong and secure attachment to her foster parents. When she was a young child, her father was confirmed through paternity tests, and he began actively pursuing reunification with his daughter. Joy was exhibiting high levels of anxiety during visits with her father and separating from her foster mother. Joy started therapy at COBYS along with her foster mother and birth father to help her develop more comfort with her father and less anxiety separating from her foster mother, which was done gradually using play therapy. In about 3 months, Joy had developed a positive and trusting relationship with her father and moved into his home without distress. The beautiful part of this story is how supportive the foster mother was in helping Joy to build a relationship with her father, and the positive relationship the foster family and birth father developed. Before ending therapy, the birth father expressed his deep appreciation to the foster family for giving Joy such a great start in life and asking them to continue to be involved in her life as her godparents. Because of therapy provided by COBYS, Joy was able to experience a smooth transition and have 2 families who love her and support her.
Thanks, Abby. So from the beginning, COBYS has been blessed with support through all of our changes and our growth. We have received sustaining investments from individuals and congregations in abundance, and that continues today. One example is these annual fundraising banquets that we've been holding since 1995. So the 2010s especially provided lots of fun and tremendous support from you.
So, while some truly questionable choices were being made in the real world, COBYS was being the adult in the room and recognizing the needs of our children and families. We identified issues and often anticipated, but certainly responded, to address the issues and challenges with solid, faith-driven solutions.
So that brings us through 40 years, from humble beginnings, expanding to meet needs, and adding depth of service to a recommitment with room to grow. COBYS has provided care with compassion, delivered with dignity, and opportunity for transformative hope. One ongoing example of the COBYS way has been Ann and Dennis Saylor. You've seen their faith lived out in service and a glimpse of who they are. And here is one more look.
+80. I lost count.
Okay. It was 116.
Oh, is it really?
How many children have you fostered since 1987?
116. My prayer is that someday I'll see them all in heaven. That's my prayer. For me, I feel like a piece of my heart. Every time a child leaves my home, I feel like a piece of my heart goes with them. But I've known I've done my duty. I've done my time with them. And I'm glad to see them move on and flourish and be able to take Jesus with them. Because we have one little boy that when he was saying his goodbyes, he said, I said goodbye to everybody. He said, do I say goodbye to Jesus? I said, he's one person you can tuck in your heart and take with you wherever you go.
So after more than 32 years of service to more than 100 children, the Sailors will be ending their service this spring. At this time, Mary Sorber, our Director of Placement Services, would like to announce how COBYS will honor their tremendous service of foster care.
I'm not going to look at you this time. Ann and Dennis are strong proponents of learning as much as they could to better serve the children they fostered. They constantly stayed updated on the latest information about trauma and challenges our kids face. So in their honor, we will be presenting $500 worth of the books that Ann loves and has read numerous times, Ghosts from the Nursery and The Out of Sync Child Has Fun, to new COBYS foster families, along with a message recognizing these resources as a recommendation of the Sailors and as an honor of their more than 32 years of service. These books are some of Ann's go-to resources for information about the kinds of trauma foster kids face. Ann and Dennis, we cannot thank you enough. Your kiddos cannot thank you enough. Your service to foster children have sent ripples farther than you can ever imagine. Dennis and Ann, please stand so we might all acknowledge and thank you for your ministry to children with a round of applause.
And while Dennis and Ann have certainly provided extraordinary service to foster children, there are many of you joining us today who have also fostered and or adopted children, whether through COBYS or another organization. Your care and selfless acts are valued and are to be celebrated. So I would invite anybody, please stand, if your family has been touched by foster care or adoption, again, whether through COBYS or another agency. Will you please stand? Take a look around. Yeah, stay standing. You can take a look around and see that the ministries that we provide really touch a wide community. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you for celebrating our look back at over 40 years with us. That brings us to today. All the groundwork has been laid, all the care has been given, and all the tremendous support have brought us.
COBYS Family Services provides foster care, adoption, counseling, and family life education to children, adults, and families in Lancaster County and surrounding communities. Throughout our history, 40 years and counting, we have been committed to providing care, delivered with compassion, dignity, and hope. Each year, we serve hundreds of clients facing difficult, often heartbreaking challenges. We're called to make sure each child, adult, and family is provided comprehensive care, going beyond the basics so the person is cared for, not just the circumstance. We do this by maintaining focus on our mission. Motivated by Christian faith, COBYS educates, supports, and empowers children and adults to reach their full potential. The expert staff of COBYS provide high-quality services by being connected to the best county and state resources, by providing best practices in care, all while maintaining the focus on each individual. All families face joys, successes, and challenges in life, but sometimes cracks form and breaks occur. When children are unable to live with their biological family due to abuse, neglect, or behavioral problems, COBYS Family Services steps in to provide compassionate care, walking alongside children in a time of uncertainty. Foster care is intended to be temporary with the goal to reunite children with their biological family as quickly and safely as possible. Adoption or another permanent option is pursued if reunification is unable to safely occur. In foster care, resource families provide love, guidance, and structure for children through the uncertainties of the foster care experience. We approve and license resource parents only after a comprehensive process is successfully completed, including extensive background checks, interviews, and trainings. Resource families are the backbone of the foster care system, ordinary people who are called to serve in an extraordinary way. COBYS provides foster care services through 2 unique programs. We monitor the safety and well-being of children, provide training and support for resource parents, and work with biological family members, all in an effort to determine the best permanent placement for children. Adoption through foster care is a beautiful way to provide a stable, loving home for children and to be the family a child needs. COBYS Adoption Services assist family members through every step of the process to adoption and in the lifelong journey as an adoptive family. Fulfilling our commitment to empowering children and adults to reach their full potential, COBYS provides a range of family life education and counseling services. We serve children and families in COBYS programs, members of the community, and neighbors and friends needing a helping hand. Through a broad range of evidence-based classes, workshops, and trainings, our family life education team provides parents and children with hands-on tools to strengthen family bonds and tackle challenges. Our counseling services are provided by trained Pennsylvania licensed therapists who offer professional clinical therapy to individuals, couples, and families. Counseling provides the opportunity to move past brokenness and toward stability and healing. COBYS Family Services is proud of the continuum of care we provide. Each day, our staff comes to work committed to providing quality care, delivered with compassion, dignity, and hope. Every child served is our one child. Every family is our one family.
We have become the agency that fully embraces our calling to these children and families who so desperately need us. COBYS is not all things to all people, but we are the thing for the people at risk in our sometimes broken and sometimes crazy world. And how many people and families have we served in 40 years? Well, you'll notice we didn't string any Christmas lights this time, because, quite frankly, we didn't see purchasing that many strings of lights as a good investment of our and your wonderful donations. Plus, we didn't want to take the time to figure out how you put all those strings of lights together.
But we did want to reveal the impact that COBYS has made with your support. So you remember the 14,654 people that we had served at our 20th anniversary. So that's going up a little bit. So real quick, with a thumbs up or thumbs down, how many of you think after 40 years we are more than 30,000 people served? Yeah, a lot of thumbs up. How about 45,000 people served? Still thumbs up. How about 55,000 people served? Still some thumbs up. So in 40 years, we have provided 61,564. 61,564 points of service to children, adults, and families. And that's like going door to door and providing services for everybody that lives in Lancaster City, or thousands more than the populations of New Holland, Ephrata, Lidditz, and Mannheim combined. For you chocolate lovers out there, that's the number of people who served, that we served, is more Hershey Kisses that are in 847 12-ounce bags. I did the research on that one. Providing services to more than 61,500 people is like helping a different person each day for the next 168 years.
4 decades of service, discernment, and exceptional support have led us to the outstanding work we are doing today and prepared us for what we need to go the distance with our families for many years to come. This preparation is important because tomorrow, just as it does every single day, the phone will ring with an ask for assistance on the other end. And we will certainly get that call, and we will answer it, because doing so is our calling. It's our mission. We will answer the call tomorrow with the same commitment to care for kids and families that we started with over 40 years ago today. And we have continued doing that for each day and each year since. Our mission and guidance by Christian faith certainly remains the same, but has been strengthened. Our level of care is the same, but is renewed by our deeper understanding and resources. Our focus is sharpened on that one child and on that one family. So as we end today's program, we hope you'll be inspired by the faces of some of the kids and families that we have served over the last 40 years. As you watch the closing slideshow, we humbly ask that you consider how you can be a part of that and how you can help us be ready for that phone call tomorrow, the one that comes in that day and the day after that. We have made it through the last 40 years, serving more than 61,000 kids and families because of your prayers and because of your resources. We need your continued partnership so that we are ready for that next child, adult, and family. The picture that we show at the next anniversary banquet, 10 years from now, may very well be that call that we get tomorrow.
So before I close our time together in prayer, I would like to remind you that you do have giving envelopes on your table as well as some pens. There is a box to my left on the table. As you leave, your contributions are certainly greatly appreciated. Will you join with me in prayer? Dear God, we are thankful for this wonderful food and fellowship we enjoyed this evening. I'm thankful for all these people who came to learn more about the ministries of COBYS. God, we ask for your continued blessing on COBYS as we seek to do what you have called us to do. And we pray for healing and wholeness for those children and families that we are privileged to serve. And now we ask for your blessing as we leave this place and we go our separate ways. And it's in the name of Jesus that we pray all of these things. Amen. Again, our sincere thanks to each of you. There are a few staff that would also like to say thanks here for the last 30 seconds or so just please watch.
Thank you for supporting COBYS.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for supporting COBYS.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for supporting COBYS.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for supporting COBYS Family Services.
And I did make an announcement earlier that I found some batteries. I think they are hearing aid batteries, so maybe you didn't hear me the first time. We have batteries. Thank you for coming. Be safe.